Hello, and welcome to the Boost Over Ball podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boost Over Ball podcast. I know that it's been a few weeks. We took that little holiday break, or did we not? I'm very confused now. Was the break last week?
We took the holiday break, and then in between Christmas and New Year's, and then last week we had the interview that we did ahead of time with Stacks.
See, I knew all this, but that was just a way to get Kyle here to update everybody on some of the awesome content that you may have missed. Last week we did an interview with Sean Stackhouse. Sure hope I got that right.
You certainly did. Is the host of RL Esports.
Yeah, it was an excellent time. We got to really deep dive into some of the lesser known steps that it takes to become basically an esports commentator and some of the cool stuff that happens around that. So if you haven't given a listen, I highly recommend it. Along that note, we are doing this to get ourselves some VIP passes, and in order to do that, we have a couple things for you. First, please remember, keep sharing, rating us 5 stars wherever you hear us. Even if you think that we're not doing that great job, just give us 5 stars. It doesn't cost you anything. It makes us happy. Makes my mom very proud of me, honestly.
Hey, me too. You can always tweet at us your critiques. It's fine. We'll take them on Twitter.
Yeah. DM Kyle directly with everything that you think about us, honestly. And yeah, it helps us a lot. Please, like, share, rate, subscribe, all those fun things. And then one more little bit of news is we are going to be heading over to San Diego for the Winter Major in April. And if you find us, we are going to have some shirts and stickers for you. I wouldn't call it merch because we're not selling anything. We're not that cool yet. But if you want a cool shirt, you want some cool stickers, feel free to find us. And as part of our thank you to anybody who does this next little challenge, if you tweet at RL Esports and you tell them that we deserve to get VIP passes for our awesome work here on the Boost Over Ball podcast, we'll have a special sticker for anybody that shows that they have done that. I think I got all the housekeeping out of the way. What do you think, Kyle?
Oh,
anything else?
I think just looking ahead, we're going to try and do 1 or 2 pretty big interviews we got that are currently in the works before we get back into RLCS content as the winter split opens up the weekend of January 27th. So until that time, we will today be talking about everything Roster-Mania and all of the crazy transfer window tweets and everything that kind of happened in the transfer window. And we'll hopefully bring you a pretty exciting and big interview next week.
Yep, and then just one more time before we jump into it, I just want to say thank you everybody who's listening. Your support means a lot to us. I think we're up to like 16 people, and only 2 of them are our moms. So I think we're doing pretty good.
Oh yeah, certainly better than I ever thought. I mean, I didn't think a bunch of people would want to listen to me talk, and we can't thank everyone for listening enough. But without further ado, do you want to jump into our Roster-Mania episode here for the winter split?
Oh, I'm going to let you do the honors because our little talk before we start recording here, you have all the energy on this one. And the background, I just like listening to hear you talk about this. I'll jump in with, my normal random commentary that just completely derails the thing. That's my job here. You know the stuff. I just derail.
Well, balances it out. But the big, starting off in EU, the big news is Rise. Rise announces he wants to leave Moist Esports, and that kind of puts everyone on notice. A few NA teams were interested, with V1 ultimately appearing to be the front runner. of the Rise sweepstakes before, at the 11th hour, with 7 hours to go in the transfer window, it's announced that Rise will be joining Oxygen Esports to team up with Jorias and Archie. He takes the spot of Oli, which we will get to in a little bit, but that in my eyes becomes one of the most skilled rosters in Europe, and I am extremely excited to kind of see how they perform. I'm not sure how quickly they will be able to gel as a team, but I certainly think that they have potential to build on their regional win from last split. Next, we'll kind of work like dominoes here, right? So Rise leaves Moist, which opens up a spot, which is then filled by Juicy. Juicy is a young French Rocket League player, because the scene needs more young French Rocket League players apparently, and he's from Het, HEET, who finished tied for 15th, which is last in the EU last fall. I am intrigued by this because I feel like Moist kind of has a lot of name recognition. I don't know if surprised is the right word that they kind of didn't go after any other big names, or maybe people just weren't willing to relocate. I know Moist Critical Charlie does a really good job about not taking any of the winnings from the players because he doesn't need it. So it has always seemed to me that would be a pretty appealing place to play. However, in 2 transfer windows, they've lost Vatira and Rise.
Wasn't there another, I thought, French player that jumped from a losing team to then, wasn't he part of BDS that ended up winning the World Championship?
Yeah, Extra.
Yeah, these young French stars from these not so great teams scare me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Alpha 54 with Vitality when he was playing Fairy Peaks French, KDOP's French. I mean, there's a lot of French Rocket League players. There's certainly a track record for great young talent coming out of France. They have a very good Rocket League, program. I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but there's certainly a lot of French players that play in EU and have found success. So I think that they're hoping Juicy can be another name in a long line.
Well, now we got to talk a little bit about Oli. Oli.
I think it's it doesn't really matter that much. He's
Oli Oxenfree.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as we mentioned before, he was dropped from Oxygen, but he was dropped from Oxygen in the final hour, very near the end of the transition window, which means that he currently does not have a team. And as far as I understand, he can't be picked up by anybody either because of the timing. So that's unfortunate for him. It gives him a lot of time to practice and get ready for the next transfer window and hopefully get picked up. But after all those dominoes fell, unfortunately, he's the one that got the short end of that stick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he kind of got screwed out of a spot in the split, especially after Oxygen performed so well towards the end of the fall split. So the best luck to him. Hopefully he's able to stay positive as much as he can at least and regain for the spring split. But moving on to North America, we got 2 smaller ones. Evo replaces Delta on Dignitas, and Dark Zero signs Zombie Poop Shark, ZPS, and Creams to play alongside Turbo Pulsa, rounding out their roster, and they're hoping to find a little bit more success than they had in the last split where they didn't really make any waves. A new team is formed in the form of M80, who picks up Percy and sign Lion Blaze and Kinza from Luminosity. So because of these signings, Luminosity now no longer has a Rocket League roster. As far as I know, they're not looking to leave the scene. So I think that they will be looking to pick up another roster. Potentially some teams that come through the open qualifier, looking to kind of find an up-and-coming team that they can find some good young talent on.
Well, we're talking NA now, and so we can't miss on some of the biggest part of the NA rumors and kind of fallout from Rise potentially going to NA and then not. And that was that, as we said before, V1 was looking to be top of the list for where he was going to go. They were going to win the Rise sweepstakes, but in order to do that, they were going to drop Calm, which is an interesting choice, or interesting rumor at least, because Calm is kind of the face of V1. He's the villain everybody likes to hate, right? And for me, the thing I'm wondering about now is how is this going to affect their team going forward? Because let's imagine being Calm, finding out that you're getting replaced as soon as somebody new comes along, some other shiny star, to find out that no you're not, and now you're going to have to play with these people. It might just be the fuel for his fire, and maybe he'll go even more demo heavy. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'd like to stress that we don't truly know what's going on behind closed doors, and maybe this is all kind of a smokescreen trying to feel other teams out. But from everything that I saw, Calm was going to be dropped, and Optic was going to pick him up for Magic Bear. So Magic Bear kind of being in the same position where Rise doesn't come, so Calm doesn't get dropped, so Calm isn't picked up by Optic, right? So now you have two people who, in all likelihood, were going to be dropped had Rise decided to come to NA, and now you're sitting there, well, I'm the lowest man on the totem pole, my teammate, or potentially my teammates or my team doesn't really like me, they think I'm replaceable. How does that play into your confidence, your mental fortitude, your team dynamics and your comms, your willingness to scrim with your teammates, to get better, to come up with game plans, to be successful, especially if you know that you're the one that's going to be dropped if you don't perform.
Well, and one thing that I'd like to add here is V1 has a brand, right? They have a bit of a brand. And so anything that's unsubstantiated like this could very well just be them trolling. So I think it could go. I would give it 50-50 on whether or not this was actually going to happen, or if V1 was just fueling the fire as they're known to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't say that I know either way, but I mean, I can't say that any team that has the ability to pick up Rise, I think they should. He's a fantastic player, and we've seen the effects of an English Rocket League player coming over to North America, and Rise would be no different from that, I don't think. So, I think you'd be at least a little bit crazy to not consider it, but, I don't know how much of it's speculation, how much of it's rumors, how much of it was actually true. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how the teams are affected. I mean, certainly we saw at the World Championships a little bit of this with Reddles. It kind of came out early that as soon as they lost, he was told that he was dropped from the team. So I'm not sure if he knew at all his position in the team before the World Championship started, but certainly that can't be a good position to be in.
Oh no, definitely not. And I think that if that had all come to pass, then we would have seen Magic Bear in the position of Ollie. So it's interesting. Roster-Mania or Roster-Apocalypse, or what the hell they call it? It's Roster-Mania. That it's an interesting concept, it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think a lot of it is due to the way that they do the transfer window. Do you think that that's something that needs to be refined?
I do think so, but jumping back real quick, I missed one. Furia, the last kind of the NA teams to make a roster move, they drop Kaio and instead pick up Lost from the club, who, in another kind of domino effect situation, Kaio then joins the duo of Astromic and Bems from the club, which are now under the new name of Ninjas in Pajamas. So a direct swap between Kaio and Lost to round out the NA and Sam roster changes.
I just want to say, as somebody who appreciates a good team name, Ninjas in Pajamas are my number one now.
Over
I can't
James
wait
Cheese?
to see the merch. I like James Cheese, and I now know the background and the history of where that name comes from. And if any of our listeners are interested, you can go back and listen to the Coach LBP episode where he actually tells us exactly where the name James Cheese comes from. It is great. But Ninjas in Pajamas? Are you kidding me? I can't wait to see the merch. I hope they actually sell pajamas. I will buy pajamas. 100%.
I mean, that's fair. But going back to what you asked before, I do think the transfer window needs to be amended in some capacity. I mean, just the nature of any kind of trade deadline or, transfer deadline in any major sports, esports included, is, there's going to be things that happen at the deadline. It's just the nature of sporting. And it's rather unfortunate that, someone is talented and as Oli, kind of gets left out in the cold because his team decided, with 7 hours left that they could pick up Rise. And, I mean, it's a fantastic move for Oxygen Esports. I'm excited to see where this move takes them in the standings. But, for Oli, this is just not good.
No, it's not. But, I mean, that's esports, We've talked about it, I think, way early in this podcast about how ruthless some of these teams can be as far as the social dynamics of how they work, where you can have like just two people on the team up and just kick a third person off. Like, these are young people, right? So they're going to be a bit more, impulsive, I would think, around things like this, and they want to win. So at some point, you have to make these hard decisions. And I don't know if Ollie was the right decision or not, but in picking up a better player, like picking up Rise, and if you're trying to win and you're trying to be competitive, you're trying to be the best, you have to make these kind of tough choices. And I think that this worked out bad for Ollie, but like, what suggestion would you have to fix it, to prevent something like this for a player like Ollie?
So, I mean, I don't disagree with the move at all. I mean, I definitely think, as of on paper, it's certainly an upgrade for Oxygen as they, look to continue to try to compete in the EU region. But, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's your Rocket League is losing out a little bit because Oli is not going to participate in the winter split. He's a talented player. He's won a regional event this year, this like season of Rocket League. So, maybe instituting some kind of some rule where he can decide to sign up with a team late, or a team can pick him up if they wanted to. But I don't have a ton of awesome ideas to fix it. I just think that when you're missing out on talent because of the deadline, I think that's where the fans kind of lose out a little bit.
Yeah, I do think that if they had something like some sort of like tiered window, where here's where all your trades or your drops have to be in, but the last tier is here are your pickups, so that way anybody who gets dropped is dropped ahead of time and everybody knows who's available, kind of deal. I think like something like that could be useful, because there is a certain part of the strategy right now where you can do something like, and I don't, this is completely speculative, just for anyone listening, completely speculative, but what if Rise and Auction knew from the very start that that's what they were going to do, and the rest was just to put turmoil out there and just to cause havoc and damage the mentality of other teams and just cause all this noise, which can, it can really mess up a team, as we talked about before, mentally. But if you wait till the last second, then you can also take a potentially strong opponent out of the next split by waiting until it's too late for them to find a team. So kind of the strategy right now, if you are going to be real cutthroat, is to wait till the last second, because there is no like secondary window where he can still get a team.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's certainly that would seem to me as a somewhat viable strategy that you could use. And I mean, I guess the bigger conversation in that is, because these players are so impulsive, because two players can kind of come together and decide that they want to, kind of remove the third, their current teammate or whatever the situation may be. There's not really any protection from the players. And I mean, I know esports is just a cutthroat industry and gaming environment, but I mean, you look at all the other sporting leagues, right? Like, so the NFL has the NFL Players Association, the NHL has the NHL Players Association, so on and so forth, and it just kind of protects the players from being mistreated. Because I mean, we've seen, or we've heard about and seen some orgs not paying players as as they should, or misrepresenting people, things like that. So I think, I mean, especially with kind of the age of the people competing, I think that is something that could in the future potentially alleviate some of the issues, but I don't know how viable that is for esports with as much turnover as there is.
Yeah, I hear you, and I would totally agree. Yeah, there should be some sort of protections, and I don't know what the answer is either. I'm not, I've never run an org or anything like that. I don't know all the little pieces and bits and whatever that go into those kind of decisions. But I think that's kind of why contracts end up running into every one of the sports, right? That's why these people are signing 3-4 year contracts, is because they need some sort of guarantee that they know where they're going to be playing for the next couple of years. And I could see that. I could see that becoming part of this over the long term if it continues to grow.
Fair. Well, we don't have a ton of answers there. But again, we don't know the full story behind all of the roster decisions and how everything played out. So, all we can do is speculate and give our opinions. So, I think as of right now, great decision for Oxygen, and I think another good roster move for Rise. I think this will make them a better team. But again, I feel sorry for Oli. It's unfortunate that we don't get to see him participate this split.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but we do it's just our speculation and our opinions, but these are VIP level opinions because we're gonna get
sure.
VIP passes for them. And at least our listeners seem to like our opinions. That's why they're going to DM Kyle directly with all of your critiques about this show on Twitter. So, moving on a little bit, we've talked about what's happened. We talked about some of our opinions on things and some of how we feel about some of these changes. But let's look ahead. Let's look in the future here. So, with these changes, do you have any ideas as far as, let's start NA? Do you think that anybody is going to be able to compete against the complete undefeatable and unbreakable Gen G? And tell me why you believe so and why you're wrong.
So, not as much happened in NA as we kind of anticipated, as a lot of the pros were like joking around on Twitter about before the deadline hit. So, I will be very intrigued to see how Optic and V1 stack up after all of the rumors about them trying to drop one of their players. I will be interested to see how they, continue to compete as a team. So I think that at least for the first regional event, I think that they will be maybe a little bit behind the pace. Furia, I think that's a great move for them. I think Loss is a fantastic player. I will be very intrigued to see how he kind of fits into their current system, or if they change things up. I certainly think that they're a team that was on the outside looking in, and I think that they have a really good shot at making it back into the major and the world championship conversation. But I mean, I haven't seen anything to show that Gen G will slow down. I mean, FaZe will try to compete with them as they continually do. I think Space Station will have their moments, but if anything kind of shows, then they'll get fourth. but I don't know that any of the NA teams have done enough to convince me that they will upset Gen G out of that number 1 spot.
I agree with you on those points because Gen G is not going to be unseated by anybody. But I do want to see Furia. I want to see them improve. I want to see them do better, and I really hope that this change gets them the kind of recognition they deserve. But they did go and move into NA where they have to really fight for those spots. So we're going to see. I think they discovered that this major, this last split, that competition's tougher up here. But I think in the long run, it's going to make them the better team. And I'm really curious to see how Kaio does back down in Sam, and see if the previously known as the Club Ninjas in Pajamas continue to be the dominant force down there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'll be very interesting because Kaio certainly has the experience from the World Championships. With Furia, I think he can bring that to a younger team in the club. I think that the club has some experience too, going to the World Championships, doing extremely well in the fall major. So I think that while this is unfortunate, the loss of Lost is a pretty big one. I think that Kaio will do good to fill the gap that he left.
Well, what are your thoughts on the changes that we've seen in EU?
So, like, the first thing that comes to mind is, why is everybody leaving Moist? Like, we talked about it before, and Charlie, Moist Critical, has been very vehement the entire time with his organization that he's not going to take anything from the players. So, I mean, to me, that seems like it would be a favorable organization to be a part of. It certainly seems like, Rizzo and all of them have, they support their players and their team extremely well. So I will be very intrigued to see if they are able to maintain the high standard that they've set, or if they will fall off a little bit with the addition of Juicy. Also, I mean, with the addition of Rise, does that make Oxygen the new top team in EU? I feel like it kind of does.
Well, we've talked about it in the past, though, with like teams like NRG. It's not just good players that make your team. You can have phenomenal players, but you also need teamwork. You also need chemistry, right? And I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm not saying they can. I don't really know EU all that well, but there's a certain bit of magic to it as well. So I think that this is going to make Oxygen on paper more competitive. They're already fairly competitive, but I'd be curious to see if they can mesh, because we've seen it on like Energy. They need to work on their teamwork a bit more, but you have teams like SSG, right? Space Station Gaming. You have 3 people that all want to be all-stars, or at least 2 people that want to be the all-star, and you see that lead to like double commits and just strange choices in the middle of a game that end up costing them a series, because the better choice would have been to do like Nolly did with the amazing pass down to Abjack, So I'm very curious to see how this works for Oxygen in the long run. And yeah, I also have no idea why everybody's leaving Moist. You ask good questions, Kyle. You should start a podcast.
Oh man, what an idea. But kind of the last major talking point that I got for EU is, can BDS get back to the major conversation?
No, they're washed. Final answer.
Okay. I mean, it's certainly interesting, right? So they don't make any roster changes after failing to qualify for the major. I think that they certainly have left a lot to be desired last split. I think that they are, they would be upset with the results that they've had. So I think that they can, or they would hope at least that they can perform better. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I certainly think that they've been outclassed the entire split. So I don't know unless they've kind of been in the lab cooking up something. I don't know what they could do differently to rectify that.
Well, it'd shock me if they didn't, because they just had all of that time to do nothing but practice while they watched everybody else live their glory, right? Um, so it'd be interesting to see. I think that if they don't do well in this split, we'll definitely see some roster moves going into the final split of this season. But yeah, for being the team that won Worlds and then not even make it to the first major, it's just interesting how quickly they fell. And I don't know if that's they got complacent in being the winners, or other people decided to study how they did it and counter them really hard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess we will have to wait and see.
Well, speaking of waiting and seeing, what are your final predictions? Give me your 5 EU teams.
Oh man. So I think that it's gonna be you're gonna be hard pressed to count out Oxygen. So I think I'll take them. I'll take Carmine Corp. I think that they did extremely well in the fall split, especially in the fall major with their addition of Atira. I'm still pretty high on Team Liquid. I think that they performed extremely well, which makes 3. I think that I will still take Moist as of right now. I think that while the loss of Rise is troubling for them, I think Astral really stepped up. I think he had a phenomenal fall major. So I think that if Juicy can be at least decent for Moist, I think that they will still find the results that they need. And the 5th spot, I kind of like Evil Geniuses with their roster of Cataclysm, Ivan, and Tox. I think that they have looked decent down the stretch. They're sitting in a pretty good position to try to make a run at that 5th spot, but they will need some good results. So that is what I will go with for EU.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna go based solely off the rankings here. So Carmen Corp, I think they're pretty much shooing. We're gonna see them next major. I think that Moist, they were second place overall for EU as far as points goes. I think that them losing Rise to Oxygen is going to upset that balance a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see how the little bit of a wild card they've used to replace him does. So I think if we assume that that this just disrupts their flow completely and they don't make it, who's going to rise to take their spot? I think that's going to be Oxygen. I think we'll see Team Liquid again. They had a pretty good showing. And I think that's 3. That's Carmine, that's Oxygen, and Team Liquid for me so far. And I got to pick 2 more. I believe in BDS. I think they've had plenty of time to work on themselves, and since they didn't make any roster changes, they're not going to have the same kind of needing to get back into the groove that some of these other teams do. And the final one, I think I'm going to go with Quadrant. You were so gung-ho about them, and then they didn't do well at all in the major, so I think that I'm going to base this off of you and just assume that you're like 3 months behind or ahead. You're
Fair.
like a weird time traveler.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking back in time and I saw them doing well at the winter major, not the fall major.
Aha, I see that. Okay, well, jumping in NA, I'll go ahead and start this here. Gen G, not even a question. I still have Gen G going all the way through and then winning the next major. That is my full prediction. I think we're going to see FaZe Clan, of course. I do think that version 1. God, I can't say that. I can't say I do think version 1 was memeing because I don't know. I want them to be memeing because that's so hilarious, but I don't know. Hmm. 5 NA. Genji and FaZe is pretty simple, pretty easy. I think Space Station Gaming V1, there's 4. And I'm going to call it NRG for the last. G2 really did not show up in the major, and I think that's hurt their confidence quite a bit. And I think NRG they were showing me a little bit like they have a little bit of spark left. I think they're going to make it in. I don't think we're going to see too much of a mix up otherwise. I know Furia got lost, and I hope that works out for them. But those top NA teams are really tough. What are yours?
I'm similarly gonna go Gen G. I'm also gonna take SSG and V1 for some of the similar reasons that you mentioned, but the last two, I still believe in the revival of G2. I think that they had a bad tournament with some unfortunate results. I still think that they're a good team. JNaps certainly has shown that he's more than capable of carrying them when he needs to. Chicago's has played well, so I like G2 over NRG. And then I feel like not picking FaZe is a mistake, but you know what?
With your heart, Luke.
Yep, I'm changing it. I'm taking V1 out. I think that if they're not memeing and they were actually thinking about dropping Calm, I think that will play a big toll on their mental and their team. So I will take FaZe instead of V1, and then instead of NRG, I am going to take Furia. I think that they've looked good. I think that that roster move of picking up Lost is a big one. I think that he will complement their team very nicely.
Okay. I am excited to see if we tie again, since we did before with our last predictions. Of course, we didn't predict this early out last time, so be interesting to see how that turns out. And what do you think about Oceania?
Pioneer's Power.
Yep, same. Pioneer's Power. Now we're getting to the easy ones. Now we're getting to the multiple choice where it's obviously C, right?
Exactly.
Next is Sam, so it's going to be Ninjas in Pajamas and Secret. I don't see that changing much. And now, APAC, James Cheese. Anybody want to argue that?
No. We're a James Cheese podcast.
We really are. Yeah. And then here's where it's gonna be interesting, because I think I know what we're both gonna choose, and that's, for me, it's Rule 1. It's definitely Rule 1. I want to see Rule 1 at the next major.
I would agree with you on that one. I think that Rule 1 picked up a lot of momentum kind of later on. Being picked up by an organization has got to be a huge confidence boost for those players, being able to not have to worry about, financial stuff, as they are, I assume, probably getting paid pretty well. In Civic has been, was certainly a great force for then Sandrock Gaming, now Falcons, and their kind of development as a team. And I think that Rule 1 did better than a lot of people anticipated them doing so quickly. So I am hopeful that they can kind of turn the corner and outperform Falcons to make it into the next major.
Yeah, I really see them doing it because, they were in one event as Rule 1, right? And they almost did it. So, I think that was pretty close. They got so close to actually making it to the major and knocking Team Falcons off their perch in the last split, and now they have an entire split to do that. So I think that it's going to be absolutely one. Everybody listening, is about to be another set of brilliant Rocket League and lots of excitement and us talking about stuff we are not qualified to talk about, and I can't wait.
Neither can I. We'll as we talked about a little bit earlier, we'll get back into RLCS action 2 weeks from this weekend. But that'll wrap up our coverage on Roster-Apocalypse, Roster-Mania, or as Sunless Khan would say, roster changes.
Sunless Khan would say that.
In a kind of cool edity voice that I haven't figured out how to do yet because we're still on the hunt for VIP podcasting abilities, despite the fact that we already are a VIP podcast.
Yeah. We just we're VIPs in our hearts and the hearts of our listeners, and with their help, we're gonna get the VIP passes and we'll be actual VIPs.
Oh yeah.
Dang it, it's gone. Nope, it's back. You know what else Sunless Khan would say? He would say that you should always choose boost over ball.
Thank you for listening to the Boost Over Ball podcast.